Hello, I'm Nicholas Reynolds. I'm a visual effects compositor specializing in Nuke and After Effects. Today we are going to be going through the steps it takes to tackle a pretty complex VFX shot. This will be done using mostly Nuke, while using a little bit of After Effects to pull out the grain in this plate. I will be providing the original plate and the degrained plate, so if you do not have After Effects, there's no need to worry about that. So without further ado, let's start reviewing this shot and see what it takes to complete it. Okay, before just jumping into a shot that requires a lot of work like this one, we need to go in with a solid plan to make this as efficient as possible. Let's start with the obvious, and that would be the top part of the green screen. It's missing. We can see that the head is leaving the green screen, so this is going to require a lot of rotoing on the character itself. Another big roto part is getting the top of the windows transparent. We can see that a lot of the windows themselves lack a green screen. Also, if you take a closer look, we can see that a lot of the frames around the windows have a lot of green screen spill on them. So trying to jump in and key this all out would cause a big problem. What we will be doing instead is using multiple 3D cards to pull rotos on each window. After we have a clean roto established on all the windows, we will be bringing our character back on top of our plate with a soft roto around him. Once we have a soft roto around our character, we will be pulling 5 different keys, one for each window, and applying that key data onto our character himself. Now all of this will be a majority of the work for this shot. I understand that a big part of this shot is not the fun space design part, but using these skills will be highly effective in the real world and will allow you to take on very tough shots that many can't do, allowing you to stand out in the industry. So let's jump into the first part, and that would be getting the 5 windows rotoed out by using 3D data. Okay, so I have a plain project right now with just our main plate and our 3D camera. Before we start, we want to make sure that our project settings are in the correct format. So I'm going to hit the S key under the node graph, and it will bring up our project settings. So under the file format size, we want to make sure the UHD 4K is set and that the frames per second is 24, because that is what this current plate settings are when they were brought in, and we want to keep that consistent. The next step would be to get a 3D atmosphere so we can kind of start sticking cards in there, using only our 3D camera and our plate. And the best way of doing this is using a point cloud generator. So I'm going to be leaving the point cloud generator on its default settings that Nuke prefers, and just simply plugging the source in and plugging, oops, my bad. I'm going to be using the camera here and the source there, and just hitting analyze sequence to start it. Alright, now that the analyze sequence is done, I'm not going to touch any of these keyframes or keyframe spacing here. I'm just going to leave it at default. And I'm going to go under here and hit the track points. And this will take another minute or so. Okay, so now that that's finished, if you never used the point cloud generator, this will be a good time to kind of see what it is. So I'm going to double click on this, make sure it's still up here, and we're going to hit the tab key up here, and it's going to kind of give us a rough idea of our whole room. And now this doesn't have to be precise at all, or perfect, because we're just using this more as a reference to lay out our 3D cards so we can get an easier roto job. Next step here is in the 3D environment, let's pull up a normal card. And we really can't see it because it's tiny here, but let's just start by taking the uniform scale and hitting 100 or so. And we're going to kind of just start on this side, bringing it closer to where we need it, and lining it up kind of with these windows. Okay, so I kind of have a rough idea for now, at least in the 3D world. So we want to project this onto our normal footage. So I'm going to be pulling up a project 3D, and we're simply going to be plugging in the camera and our footage, and we'll be taking that card that we just built and put that in here. And now we need to kind of get this back into a 2D view to work with. So anytime you're really working in a 3D atmosphere Nuke, we're going to be coming back and doing a scanline render. So same thing here, I'm going to be plugging this camera in the object. I'm leaving the background blank for now. And if we simply go back to our 2D view, you can kind of see that something's going on, but it's not probably anything that we really want yet. We want to kind of come under the scanline render, and we want to just change this from render camera to UV. And now we can kind of see what's going on here. It's almost like a stabilization in 3D, and this is going to allow us a lot more control over what we want to do roto wise. As this, if I go to frame, I'm on frame 90 right here. If I go over here and I look at this window and I go back to the home, it really didn't move much, which is a lot better to work with versus, going in, doing keyframes every 5 frames. We might be able to get away with 20 or so and then go in and, clean it up. Now we want to set this up right that we could bring this back to the normal viewer. So we have our scanline render here with the UV, and we have a card. So let's tweak this card maybe a little bit more and make sure we're not losing any of the outside. We want to make sure we have it almost clipping, at least on this part. And what we will be doing is using this exact same card to plug it back in. So you don't want to just copy and paste this card, you want to clone it. I'll be hitting Alt-K, and this will be cloning it. As you can see, they're cloned with this little orange reddish line. And we will be taking the same scanline render here, and I'm just going to be copying and pasting it, not cloning it. And I will simply plug this into the camera, and I will be plugging the object here, and this image will be going into our UV. So this looks a little confusing right now, but let's just break it down. We have a 3D card from our camera. It's projecting the footage, and we're unwrapping it through this, almost like it's a UV unwrap, just like if you come from a 3D environment. So we are taking this exact same information and putting it onto this card. We're taking this UV data and putting it back onto the card. So if we come in here and double click on our second scan line, we want to make sure it's back on render camera. So now it looks back in place. So if we look at our original footage here and our scanline footage here, they look exactly the same, which is exactly what we want. So anything in between these is going to get affected. For an example, I will put a grade in here, and let's just put the grain at orange, obviously stand out. Come back into here, and if we took the background, you could really see what's going on, that it's coming out there. And this will kind of give us a good start of how are we going to roto this. So I'm going to pause the video real quick and clean up this node graph a little, and we will come back onto step 2. Okay, so I'm back here, and I rearranged the whole node graph just to kind of give it more of an organization, and now this might look a lot different now, but I'm going to kind of just break down what I did. So main thing is coloring. I kind of just colored stuff more just to kind of see what's going on. So you can see the main camera, we have a lot of dots with the similar color of that. Main footage, same thing. We have the project 3D with the similar dots, just to keep everything organized. If you're newer to Nuke, or you don't have clean node graphs, you really just want to use dots. They could be your best friend and keep you looking professional. Also, the point cloud generator, I disconnected the camera and the plate because we don't need them anymore. If we double click in here, we can still get our whole 3D point cloud. Alright, so next step here, if we come back to our scanline area, if you remember, we had these two being the same. We have our UV here and our regular one here. So what we want to do is work under our UV here. This would be the easiest one to work with. So what we would intentionally be doing is doing rotos here, and that roto that's looking kind of flat here would get pushed back into the correct format. This will make it a lot easier to tackle all of these, all these windows and get it done a little quicker. So what I like to do is really just come in here and it's, it could be a little slow working on this flat here. We're going to be actually writing out all of these, so we will be having multiple parts for each window. And what we will be doing here is just first off throwing a write node and linking it here, and I'm just simply going to render this out wherever you want to keep your folders. Okay, so I have mine set up in my folder. I just labeled it projection 1. You can label it whatever. We can leave it at ProRes here. The normal frame rate, we're going to keep it at, the 282, and we're going to let this render. Okay, so I let that render, and now we need to bring that back in so we can work with it. So an easy way to just import stuff quickly that we just wrote is you could just, take your file here on your write node, just copy that whole thing, hit the read, and just hit open, and now we have this. So now that this will, render a lot quicker since it's just an MOV file, let's take a look at it. So I just hit 2 just to have my second viewer be on it, and we're just going to view it. Alright, so going through this, kind of see what's going on here, is we have the window area locked on, and this is going to help us do a 3D roto. So what we want to do now is we can disconnect this image, so we don't need that anymore, and we just want to stick a card, or sorry, a roto, put that onto our card here. And if we simply, start working in here with our roto, for example, I'll do a rough one real quick just to kind of show you what's going on. I'm going to come in here and pre-multiply it by the alpha. So if you see now, we did one keyframe while looking through this viewer that we rendered out. We did one keyframe here just to kind of see what's going on. We're not having it move, it's just staying still. And when we look at it through the render here, we have an alpha that's moving along with our 3D render. So to visualize this a little bit more real quick, you don't have to do this part, but I'm going to be deleting this in a second, but kind of see what's going on here. Whoops. Kind of see how this is locked on now. So the idea of this is just to help really speed up your roto, because if I wanted to go in, each frame here on my original plate, this would require a lot of animation, and you can't get as accurate. When you're looking through a viewer like this, you could really see where you're going to mess up and what needs, very fine details that you might not catch doing a normal footage roto. So I'm going to pause this now, and I'm going to do a more detailed roto, and we'll come back to that. Okay, so I'm back, and I just did kind of a rough roto on this, and basically just kind of subtracting these windows. Remember, I'm ignoring him because we're going to bring him back on top. I'm also bringing this stuff back on, so if we look at the alpha of our project here, kind of see what's going on there. Like I said, remember, we're just using this that we rendered out as a preview, and we're using that just so we could work on our roto layer, which is here. So at the end of the day, we're not going to use this, and we're not going to have this card be linked to this scan line. This is just so you can work a lot quicker. I could really skim through this and really see detail. So let's say that we have a perfect roto here, which this isn't. This is just a quick one for the tutorial purpose, but we need to get this alpha basically back into our main plate. So I brought a few dots in here of the main footage going this way now, just so we can kind of see what's going on. So our normal plate here, I'm going to exit these. This is our normal plate, it's untouched, it's just coming from here. And we have our scan line here, which looks blank, but remember we have this alpha going on. So remember, this is projecting here like I went over earlier, and we're just on the alpha channel, if I hit A, you could see we have what we just rotoed from this shot. So we kind of just need to brain in a normal copy into our channels, and we're going to copy the alpha from here to here, and in between those we want to invert those. And the reason why is if we come in here, if we're looking at this through the alpha channel, we got this window and this window are white, and we want the opposite. We want to get rid of that. So just remember that any plate that goes in to the master here, we want to have an invert. So now if I go to the invert here, you can kind of see what's going on. We want to keep all of this for now. Obviously we can get to these windows later, but we want to keep this stuff and we want to get rid of the windows. So now we copy that into our alpha, and still nothing's going on here, but if we hit the pre-molt, if you're familiar with using green screens and whatnot, you can kind of see what's going on here. We kind of have a subtract of what's going on. Obviously this is very messy, just trying to get this quick for the tutorial purpose, but you can kind of see we're getting rid of the windows, because we don't really need to try to key out these windows, especially when he's not there. And what we will eventually do is have a roto of him, put him on top, and we're going to green screen him out. So that way we're not trying to key out everything over here and over here when he's not there. We're only keying out the area. If I go back to my original plate, we're only keying out the area where we really need is, you know, the guitar and all that, the head, his body, and, you know, there's no point in having a full-on key here. So I hope that makes sense. And for this tutorial, I think what we will be doing is I will be bringing in my older rotos that are clean, that I spent a lot of time on, and for this purpose we will be combining all of those together to get the correct window holdout, and then we can move on quicker onto other stuff like keying them out, and then eventually getting to more of the fun part like the space design. Okay, so now what I want to do, just to kind of really show you how to do this whole roto in the 3D space, is we will be doing the same process here on another card, such as over here, and we will be combining it with this setup, inverting it, and putting it on our normal plate. And the reason why I want to show you this is once you know how to take two of them and combine them, you could take as many as you'd like. If you want to get very specific and get this window, and this window, and maybe over here. But for the sake of this tutorial and keeping the speed of it going, I'm going to probably be showing you how to combine another card and then delete it after and just bring my old work in, and then we can move on to other stuff. But I highly recommend you go in and do a precise roto on everything, or else the shot's just not going to look good. That's a majority of this shot after all. Alright, so let's begin. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my point cloud generator here, and we're just going to do that same process. I double click it, we don't really see anything, got to go over here in the viewer and hit the tab. I'm going to clear out all of this stuff so we can get rid of that. Actually, just hit 2 there, so I don't want to see that. We're going to do the same process here. Let's duplicate this card. I'm just going to start with this card, and if you go to edit, you can actually declone it so it's on its own. And maybe, let's see, so it looks like these are the 2 frames for the main window there. So I'm going to kind of take this, set it up like so. Maybe that. And okay, I'm gonna change the color on this. I'm holding Command Shift C, and just for organization, change it to whatever color you want. Now let's clear this out. I'm gonna go back to here. Now we're gonna follow this same process. I want to move this here, and let's clean this up a little. Think about this for a second. Disconnect this. We have, what is this? This is our footage here. And we have our card. So let's do another scanline render. I want to keep this color-wise This is our UV one, remember that? So we want to go there. Take this onto our projector. Take the camera, which is this one. Kind of just try to keep this organized. And see if this looks correct. Alright, so this should look similar to the process we had before. So you can see it's kind of just staying still. Obviously there's a little bit of movement, but this is just more of a roto assist. And what we want to do is try to line this up maybe a little bit better. And we're going to clone this card once it's in a spot that we think works. Remember, Alt-K. And take the same scanline render, bring this in. So what I could do if you ever want to, take this same color and apply it here, I'm going to bring both of these in. You can see my red one and my pink one. I'm just going to hold Alt, drag that there. Now we got two of these same. So remember we have our UV one. Right there it says UV, and we have our regular render camera. So we're going to go through the same process here. We're going to take the camera there, take the object there, and if we put down our projection here, should look exactly the same as our footage. So, yep. So we would do the same thing we did here, is take this right node. We can even just take it down here. We don't have to duplicate it. Whoops. And link that here. And I'm just going to name this projection 2. And let's hit the render. Same thing, 282 frames, hit OK. Alright, so I'm back here and the render finished, so same ordeal here. I'm just going to hit R for read. Sorry, one sec. Let's come in here. I'm going to copy this just to quickly import it. Hit OK. And now just move that out of the way and we can disconnect this. Remember, we're going to be plugging the roto in here, not that. So let's look in here and it's the same setup. And now I'm going to just do the same thing here. Take the roto. While looking through here, we're going to be doing a roto here. And I set the pre-molt to alpha. And just do a really quick one just for the demonstration again. And so you can kind of see the idea what I'm trying to explain here on using a 3D projection to help with your rotos. Is we're getting a lot less keyframes. Obviously this is pretty messy, but even if you're doing precise, it's not going to be nearly as long as it would just doing a normal roto on the layer, even if you were using little 2D trackers or whatnot. So let's see, I want to plug this back in. So we had this setup here that we were doing earlier, and we want to keep this invert with the copy, and we just want to simply merge our scanline renders now. So if I go in here, alpha there, and we have an alpha in here. This looks correct. We merge these, and we have a master alpha, but it's still not inverted. We want to leave the invert down here, because if we have the invert here, we have to do multiple inverts, and on the merge it's just not going to work right. It's easier to have a single invert here and just link everything at the end. So you have your whole roto here. We have the front window, and we have the left windows, and we're merging them together here, and we're getting a complete alpha. So let's plug this back in, kind of see what's going on here. If I turn the display off, See how it's kind of just locked in. This is a really powerful tool, and we can get a way more accurate roto and cut hours off on the time. This roto will probably still take hours to get precise, depending how fast and how ideal of quality you want to get on it. So for the rest of this tutorial, I'm going to be deleting this, like I said, and bringing my old roto setup in. But now you should be able to just kind of get a whole roto on your own and just do this same process with taking these scan lines, aligning them through this, this point cloud generator, and just merging them together and then inverting them. And this will get you kind of where you need to be. Just mainly, the main goal here is just to eliminate that background, because there's so much of the green background and we really don't need all that. So this is going to be the majority of the part of this shot. And now once I cut this video, we'll have the old roto that I've done, and it will be a lot more accurate, and we can move on to keying out him and doing a little soft roto on him. Alright, so I still have the same setup. I didn't touch anything here. This is just kind of the quick roto that I was doing throughout the tutorial. But what I did bring in here is my older roto, and you can see if we take a look at it, it's a lot more accurate as I spent a lot of time on it. You can get all the little details, and this is the same idea that you should be applying that we did here, because this is all I did is I used this same tactic through the scan line renderers and the 3D cards, merging them on top and getting this. And this is obviously going to work for what we need. So for the sake of this tutorial, I would unplug what we did and plug in what I already did in the past, but you should go in and really do an accurate roto. And let's say after that you have an accurate roto looking good. Let's take a look at it here. What we will do to finish off this tutorial is just kind of highlight everything here, and we're going to add a backdrop. If you just hit tab and search backdrop, we're just going to bring this in. And the whole point of this is just to keep organized. So I'm just going to name this probably 3D roto, and yours is probably going to have a lot more of these nodes because it would have a lot more work done to it. But at the end of the day, it should all plug in through the merges, and where this is should be replaced with that. So it should just simply plug into the invert. So it should, look like this, gets inverted and plugged into our pre-molt that we were doing earlier. And now we'll probably move on to going back into here. We'll probably take this footage and move it over here and start focusing on him. And what we'll do is we'll roto him out lightly, start pulling keys on him, and we'll brain it on top of here because obviously he's missing. And we'll move on from there. So I hope you understand, you got a little insight of how 3D cards work and using them for rotoscoping, and also using the scanline render through UVs and then putting it back on. And hopefully you can use this on this shot, and you can use it on other shots in the future. Maybe you'll stand out in the crowd doing that. Again, I hope you learned something from this. See you next time.